What were you excited to try for the first time, but ended up being really disappointing? This would make a great Cards Against Humanity question. Oh, that's my answer. Cards Against Humanity. I didn't get into it. It really leans on shock value. The one joke of the whole game is that it's shockingly offensive irreverent. It gets stale pretty fast for me, and ultimately I prefer apples to apples because it requires more creativity from the player. Turkish Delight. Chronicles of Narnia made it seem so heavenly. I remember in 5th grade we were reading about Narnia and had to write about how wonderful we imagined Turkish Delight to taste, except I had tried it before and wasn't a fan. I adore Turkish Delight and I also love chocolate, so I thought the combination would be divine. Nope. They just don't go. I can imagine a piece of roast Turkish Delight with a thin layer of dark chocolate around it being good, but the usual thick milk chocolate bar with a sliver of watery Turkish Delight in the center is terrible. All the fun in Turkish Delight is the soft but dense texture and powderiness of the icing sugar. Goatee. Started watching season 1 when season 3 was being aired. I got 2 or 3 episodes in and was just bored by it all. Would you be willing to try to the books? The TV show wasn't my favorite thing in the world either, but I did like the books. His description of detail was nice. Nah, I don't read recreationally, except the D&D books, but they don't really count as reading. I always tell people you need to power through the first 3 lol. Episode 4 is where it starts to get good. But it's not for everyone I guess. Didn't stick it out long enough. There's a lot of slow tension building through season 1. Book 1 as well. You avoided a lot of disappointment. For me it was paintball. I liked a few FPS games back in the day, so I went with my team of friends, but found paintballing massively stressful and confusing. The funny thing is those skills don't really transfer as well for people in the actual army either apparently. I went to play one time and the day before the place had a big group of guys who were all army buddies who played together, and it seemed like they'd just thrash their opponents. Turns out they were too tactical with it and weren't expecting people to be charging them all the time, since it's a non-lethal sport. Reminds me of the Duffel blog article all veteran paintball team loses to group of teenagers because they didn't have artillery or air support or something like that. Harry Potter. I tried to power through it, but quit after book 5. I just didn't care at all about any characters. The Tree Wizard Tournament book was pretty creative though. Book 6 was one of my favorites, though. I admit, book 5 was my least favorite in the series, so I see where you're coming from with that one. But the next one was pretty neat, because Harry finds an old potions textbook with tons of notes in the margins, made by the Half-Blood Prince, so his teacher thinks he's like a prodigy in the subject. I loved the books, but I agree that at some point the author was just throwing things together and retconning events to fit the new stories. Digital art. Now don't get me wrong, I use it from time to time, and it can be useful when I wanna make a wallpaper or something. But it just wasn't really fun. I'm hoping the more I do it the better it will be. I grew up doing mostly vector art because my dad gave me his old laptop which had Corel Draw on it. As a result, I have a super hard time doing traditional art because I'm so used to having mathematically defined shapes, I can't deal with the imperfections and mess of traditional work. I feel like both different styles take time. I do traditional more because I'm not a very tech savvy person and I like holding my art in my hands rather than looking at a screen. But I will say, after getting perfect lines and circles with digital art, it can be a pain to draw. Lobster. I've had it a number of times and I just don't get it. I want to like it but it really just does nothing for me. Lobster is just big shrimp. Change my mind. I mean, that's not a bad thing. Lobster, my favorite melted butter delivery system. I used to like lobster, but now I can't stand the texture of it. It's too chewy for me. I prefer soft tender crab with butter. Depends on the lobster. I've had inedible chewy lobster and that is very bad. I only eat lobster for the cup of butter tbh. Cooking it's harder than those tutorials they make it seem so easy. I tell myself, if I follow the directions as carefully as possible, it will turn out perfect. Nope. Barely edible most of the time. But I suppose barely edible is better than inedible. It blew my mind to find out some recipes lie about how long it will take to cook something. Ready in 15 minutes. No, more like ready in 2 hours. Try a really easy recipe to begin with, and you can make something nice. Then slowly build up from there. Homemade sauces for pasta or rice are pretty easy, and if you like mushrooms they are actually impossible to cook for too long. This is a decent place to start, and it's hard to go wrong. Seafood, I really just don't like it. In and out. Everyone goes on and on about it, but it didn't live up to the hype for me. Gold's Gym was super hyped and way disappointed. Same here, but with Club Metro only one squat rack FFS. Ziplining was kind of cool, but not worth it, and I looked like a dork. BC they didn't have enough helmets my size. But did you give them a good shaka bra, as they took your picture? Raising Cane's. The chicken didn't taste good to me, and the sauce was also nasty to me at least. Everyone swears by it, and I swear I'd rather have Popeyes. For me it was spend hours for a good set in RPG, and realizing that it doesn't work how I wanted it to work. Reality is often disappointing. Filet mignon. I have had many steaks that were much more tender, juicy, and flavorful for about $10 to $15 less. Selling. It took way too much thinking to be enjoyable for me. Marching band. I mean, I didn't know what I expected, but it was just too boring, and too regimented and unfun. Dragon fruit. Looks super interesting and tasty, but kinda just tastes like nothing until the middle, where it's only slightly sweet. 10 years old me was so disappointed lol. Statue of Liberty. My 10-year-old heart was crushed. Elevator was broken. Had to walk so far up for a 2-minute lookie. Astroneer. The control scheme is genuinely awful, and they seem to have paid no heed to anyone with a computer smaller than New York. Licorice. Instant disappointment for most children. Drinking Bud Light for the first time. Never again. I rather drink other good Alachol than that nasty Bud Light. Arby's roast beef sandwich. I was so excited, then so disappointed. Skydiving. It was super stressful on the plane ride up, and then I don't remember anything until the chute was pulled. The glide down was cool, but pretty painful. Once was enough for me. The Beyond Burger. It tastes just like meat they said. You can hardly tell the difference they said. Sushi. Sorry guys, I tried to like it. Please don't crucify me. Watching Saturday Night Live. Really, it's mid at best. The past few seasons have come off a little lazy to me, because literally every other joke is about Trump. Try searching for some segments on the SNL YouTube channel. There is some real comedic gold on there, especially when the cast members laugh and break character. Alcohol. I can't stand it. Anything I try tastes disgusting. Chick-fil-A. I just don't understand. I got a regular chicken sandwich, it was flavorless. In fact, I have gotten better at the school cafeteria. I don't understand how people say it's amazing. If you really prefer a processed pressed and formed chicken patty to Chick-fil-A, then I can't help you. Being alive. Sounds fun on paper, but after 2 decades it gets really boring, stressful, and depressing. Those big rainbow lollipops you see at carnivals and circuses, they look so delicious and colorful, but taste vile. I've had a lot of bad experience eating rainbow colored anything. Receiving oral. But I may just had bad partners lol. Matcha. I knew about the strong grassy taste, but I couldn't finish it. My roommate gave me old sushi, and I can't get into it as a result. The very thought of sushi grosses me out. KFC. Ordinary overpriced chicken, with the taste of grass. I'm sorry, but what? Have you ever eaten grass? Sushi. I've always heard from everyone I know about how delicious it is, and when one of my sisters took me to a Japanese restaurant, all I could think about was I wanna eat it. I wanna. Sometimes I wonder if my tongue is broken or something like that, because I can't like it. It literally comes back every time I try to put a sushi roll in my mouth, while everyone eats it, like it's the yummiest thing in the world. Playing a new game, then something comes up like exams, occasion, events, circumstances etc. And then going back to it when you realize that you don't enjoy it as much anymore. Happened to me with Hollow Knight. JT was such a ref king of game 10. LARPing. It looks really fun to me in videos I've seen, and I love the concept of it, but when I actually went, I found I was too afraid to talk to anyone there, so my experience was really boring. It ended up being a weekend camping in fancy gowns, but it was quite lonely, despite the amount of people who were there. If I ever get better at talking to people, I'd love to try it again though. Piano. I'm going to be completely honest, it's not all that fun in my opinion. You have to learn the notes I learned off of YouTube. I don't even know the notes lol. Plus you'll get frustrated that you keep getting a part wrong and then give up and come back and be like, what's the notes again? Lord of the Rings. Everyone was reading The Hobbit in high school and I was an avid reader, so I started reading it. Bored me to tears. I just hated it. Because of that experience, I've never seen the Lord of the Rings movies either, and don't care for any type of fantasy novel to this day.